Hello, everyone. My name is Ina Sergeychuk. I'm marketing manager at Luxoft. Welcome to the 8th webinar of Luxoft Technology series of free online events with famous lectures. During the webinar, you can ask your questions in the Q&A box in the panel. You can see it. And if you have any technical questions, any problems with sound or connection you would like to ask about, please use chat box. Okay, so today's our guest speaker is Evgeny Borisov. Evgeny is international speaker and owner of Invite IT Consultancy and has been working since 2001 as a Java developer, team leader, and Java architect and Java trainer. So today we are going to talk about Spring. So Evgeny, I give the word to you.
Okay, can you see my screen? The guy with a knife?
Not yet.
Not yet? Why?
Evgeny, please start sharing your desktop. You can see ticket quick start. Okay.
Okay, now you can see?
Yes. See.
Okay, great. Let's start, guys. So actually, this presentation was written in the beginning for the J-Point Hardcore Conference, but the target auditory is the people which use Spring. If you are working with Spring today, even without knowing the Spring internals, it will be interesting to participate in this session. Because I will start from the beginning. I will explain the basic of the Spring very quickly, and then we'll go deeper with a knife to the Spring internals. We will cover a lot of internal components of Spring in order to understand how it is working and in order to make some conclusions in the end how to use Spring correctly. So several words about myself. So today, Irene explained what was my background. So today I'm a freelancer. I'm mostly writing the courses. I'm writing the code for the JFrog company. Singletons, I'm not writing anymore. We have a Spring for that, so we can just drink them. I'm suffering from allergy in Spring, but nevertheless, I love Spring framework, and that's the reason this was my choice to talk about the Spring in this session. So the agenda of today, the next Spring internals. Then we will talk about Spring lifecycle. We will talk about different Spring contexts. We will start with historical lines with XML context, then we'll talk about annotations, then we'll talk about context which can be configured from Java file called Java config, then we'll talk about Groovy config a little bit, and finally we will try to write our own kind of context. It will be something special and interesting. And in the end we will talk about the performance, how does Spring influence on performance on your application, and how can you use it correctly in order not to hit it too much. The other name for this session can be Spring in Pictures, because I'm trying to provide very simple explanation for each Spring internal component, so you can see on the screen the Spring components we are going to cover today. We'll talk about bin definition reader, the context listener, the bins, the bin factory, the class path bin definition scanner, and so on and so on. So let's start. What was born in this date, 26th of November of 2000? Actually, it is not the born of the Spring. Spring was born a little bit before, but in this day, Jürgen Holler and John Robb developed a first XML bin definition document reader. And the purpose of this class was to scan the XML file in order to make possible to start Spring context. Okay, so as I already told, you have different ways to configure Spring. I believe most of you know this. And the first context was XML context. So this class is responsible for starting the context by using the DOM technology. He scans the XML, creates the bin definitions, and bin factory start working according to them. Okay, so first of all, let's see how bin was declared via XML in the beginning of the Spring. Just a moment, I see some question. Okay, everything is okay? Because I remember you told me not to look in the chat, so I did it only. It was the last time I looked at the chat.
We can hear you very well. And I would like to say once more, please write your technical questions regarding the sound and everything else just in chat. And the Q&A box is for questions to the presentation.
But you already checked. Everyone can hear me good enough. I can continue, or do you want me to wait several seconds in order to
continue? Please continue.
Okay, so let's start with declaring bin via XML. So currently I'm using the IntelliJ ID, and the first thing we need to do is just to add dependency, because I'm building my project with Maven. Not because I love it, but because it's the most popular framework. So let's go to search maven.org and let's check what is the last version of the Spring. The main artifact of Spring today is Spring Context. If you work in your production with older versions of Spring, like Spring 3.1, you need to add a lot of jars of Spring. But from the last versions of Spring, I mean the 3.2.5 or Spring 4, you just can add only one jar. And because of the transitive dependencies, you will receive several jars which will cover all Spring core files. So the last version of Spring today is 4.1. Okay, so let's take this dependency. Let's add it to our IDE. Let's see which jars we will receive in addition. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so as you can see, we receive not only Spring Context, but we also receive Spring Beans and Spring Core and Spring AOP and Spring Expressions and some logger file. So we have the main Spring in our project after we just add only one dependency. Now, let's start with some Java code. And let's declare from this code later the bin inside the XML. So I want some interface, let's call it quarter. This interface will have only one method. This method will be void. Let's call it, say, quad. Let's implement this interface with implementation. Let's call it terminator quarter. Okay, because I believe you know a lot of quads of terminator. And I want this class will have property from string type. Let's call it message. And we will use it here in order to say our message in that way. Now, if I want to declare bin from that class in my context XML, and if I want to configure the message value in XML, I need to create a setter, because how actually Spring is working, according to XML configuration, Spring will create object from terminator quarter class. And if I want to configure the message, Spring via reflection will invoke the setter. If I don't have a setter, Spring will think that I don't have any property called message. So in order not to have a problem, we will add setter to the message. And now I'm ready to create the context of Spring in my resources. I'll use IntelliJ in order to generate some header for this XML. Okay, I can create Spring config. Let's call this file context of Spring. So you can see already some place where I can declare my bins. And I need to provide some information for Spring. It must be ID, how Spring will call this bin, and from which class the instance should be created. So the name of the class is terminator quarter. And ID, for example, will be quarter. And I have property called message. As you can see, IntelliJ sees only one property in this bin because IntelliJ has very good integration with Spring, and he sees it actually with Spring eyes. So because I have only one setter, from the point of view of IntelliJ and Spring, I have only one property called message, and the value of this message will be, for example, I'll be back. Okay, now we finished this first simple configuration. I have only one bin in my context, and now I want to have some kind of test or some kind of main where I want to start with Spring context. Okay, let's create main method. And let's start Spring context. So in order to do that, because I'm using the XML, I want to use the class called class path XML application context. The name of this class is very long, but this name explains what kind of context do I have. So we have a lot of different kind of such classes in Spring, and all of them ends with application context because actually they are application context. XML says that the type of the context I choose to start with, it's XML file, and class path explains where this XML must be, okay, physically. So the best idea is to put it in the resources or in some subdirectory under the resources, because as you know, resources will be part of the class path, but in order to separate between classes and resources, we don't want to mix it and put it inside the packages. Here I should provide the relative name, including the name of the file, XML file himself, because my context XML inside the root, I'll just write. Okay, I see some question. Guys, so about the questions, I prefer to, I'll give you time to ask in question and answer tab, time to time. Okay, so I will, the first part, and you will have your time to write some questions for me. Okay, so now I created the context, and the next step is to make a lookup for the bin in order to check that my bin was configured correctly with Spring. So I'm making the lookup. You have several options. As you can see, there is an overloading here. I can make a lookup by the ID of the bin, or the name of the bin, it's the same. I can make a lookup by the class, or I can make a lookup by the interface. The most correct way is to work against the interfaces. This is the Spring philosophy, but I in purpose want to make a lookup by the class in order to explain you why it's better to work against the interfaces. So for now, it will be okay, but after 20 or 30 minutes, you will see a problem and we will solve it, but I want to talk about this problem. So I'm just making a lookup. So I'm receiving the bin here. This is my bin. Let's call it Terminator Quarter, for example. And now I want to invoke method say quote, and I want to see that I'll be back will be printed. What's the problem? Okay, it seems that I have some problem in my XML. No, just a moment. Bin from class Terminator Quarter and ID quarter. Okay, and oh, it's not context properties. All right, it must be context XML. Great. Right. Message is null. Why the message is null? Because now I didn't provide any information for the message, so it was not configured. So let's do it again. Bin property message value I'll be back. And now let's run it again. And we can see message I'll be back. Okay, so actually what Spring did, he just somebody scanned this XML because this the default of the Spring is to create singleton. If I want to change it, I can write here scope and provide here some other scope, for example, prototype. And after this bin was declared and it was created, I make the lookup for that bin and I invoke the message and invoke the method say quote, and say quote just printed the message, I'll be back, and everything is okay. Okay, so if you will summarize it with some diagram, how it's work, this diagram later will be much more complicated, but just now we have only one or maybe two components of Spring. So we have the classes in our class path. Part of the classes is written by us. Part of the classes is just my third-party libraries. Spring doesn't care. and we have XML configuration file with all the bin declarations. Then when we start the context comes bin definition document reader, XML bin definition document reader. He scans this XML file. This bin definition document reader creates the bin definitions, and according to these bin definitions, our bin factory start working, creates the bins and put them inside some kind of IOC container. But IOC container, it's inversion of control container, but it's just simple hash map, something like that. And when we make a lookup or when we use these bins or inject them to the other bins, they already fully configured objects. Okay, this was first simple part, and now I'm ready to answer the questions if you have them. Questions and answers, where it was. Question and answers. Yes, please. I saw some girl wanted to ask something. How can I fix it? Okay, it's technical problem. So again, guys, if you have some questions to me, you need to write them to the Q&A tab. If you have technical problems, you write them to the chat. So if in 10 seconds I don't see any comments in the Q&A, I got from that you understand. It's easy, and we will continue. 5 seconds. Okay, let's go on. So the next internal component of Spring after the bin definition document reader and bin factory is bin post-processor. The duty of bin post-processor allow to us to configure the bins before they will become a part of the Spring context. Okay, if you want to add some additional custom configuration to our bins, we can just write our own bin post-processor to register it in Spring context, and bin factory will not just simply create the bin, but will consult our bin post-processor and will give to him a chance to run our custom code. So let's invent some example for that. Let's say I want to declare here some additional property, integer repeat. And I want to use this repeat in the say quote that way. Okay, and let's put it here. Okay, so, and I want that this repeat variable will be configured by Spring according to the annotation. Let's invent here some annotation. Let's say here inject random int. Inject random int annotation, it will be my custom annotation, and it will receive two parameters, min, for example, min will be 2 and max will be 5. Okay, this annotation is not exist, so let's create it. I just create the annotation. Pay attention that the retention must be runtime. This annotation has two integer properties called min and max. Okay, now it will be compiled. But what will happen if I'll run this main? I'm running the same main. We can see 0 time the message was printed because the value of repeat 0, because nobody take in account my annotation and nobody considers the value of min and max. Nobody generates the random value and inject it to repeat because Spring cannot know this annotation. I just invented it several seconds ago. So in order to teach Spring that I do have a new custom annotation, and every time that you create in a bin, you need to scan the fields of this bin, and if you will find some fields annotated with inject random int annotation, you should fields by injecting to them numbers between min and max. Okay, so let's see how can I extend from Spring infrastructure and customize it. First of all, I need to create class which will implement bin post-processor interface. And let's think about good name. The name should be something like inject random int annotation bin post-processor. Okay, it is very important not to be afraid from the long names. Let's take an example from the Spring. All the names of the internal Spring components are very long, but they holds very good explanation what should they do. So I need to implement bin postprocessor, and let's first of all see what does this interface actually declares. Let's switch to the presentation. Okay, this I believe it can be closed. Okay, so this interface actually has only two methods: post process before initialization and post process after initialization. Later, I will explain why this interface has two methods and not only one. But just for now, let's understand the main picture. So this method, or both of these methods, takes two parameters as input. The first parameter is the bin, and the second parameter is string the bin name, and they will return an object. And the object will be the bin. So that means that any bin postprocessor which will be registered in our infrastructure, later I will show you how to register it, can replace the bin with any other object, or even just can configure the bin he received from bin factory and just return the same object. How it is working? After bin factory will create, in our example, in our case, the terminator quarter, before putting it to the context, putting it in the IOC container, it will invoke the post process before initialization method of my and this bin and my bin postprocessor will take a chance to configure it and then return it back to the bin factory before it will be part of the context. Okay, so let's implement these two methods. Implement methods, as you can see, only two. In both of them, I want to return the original bin. I'm not replacing the bin. Later, we will talk about when we will want to replace. And for now, because I still didn't explain why do we have two methods here, it seems that there is no difference where we will write our custom code, but it will be much more correct if we will do it here. Later, I explain what the difference between them. So what should be done? First of all, before I'm returning the bin, I'm taking it and I want to iterate through the methods, through the declared fields of this class of this bin, in order to try to find maybe there is some fields annotated with inject random int annotation. So let's iterate all them. Okay, this way. Now I want to fetch annotation called inject random. Okay, this one of two ways to check if the annotation present is just to check if it's null or not. Okay, so what does it mean the annotation is not null? That means that there is annotation inject random int above this specific field. Okay, so if there is annotation, first of all, I want to read the values of that annotation. Okay, let's put them aside. Then I want to generate some random number between min and max, which was taken from the annotation. Okay, so let's create some random object. Let's declare some random number, which we'll generate here. Random number, random with a number. What will be the formula? Random next int. Here will be the difference between it's my range max and +1. I think something like that, right? Okay, so we generated the random number. The next step will be to inject this random number to the field above which we found this inject random int annotation. So first of all, I need to change set accessible true, right? And then I can do something like that, field set bin and a random number, but I don't like this way. Why? Because the set of field throws a lot of checked exceptions, and we need some ugly try and catch. So we have a much more nice way to do it with Spring. Spring has some reflection utils, which wraps Spring hates the checked exceptions. So it's a lot of utility classes which can replace the same code, but without handling exceptions. So it has set field method, and we should provide the field and the object to which field I want to inject the random number. Okay, so more or less that is all. Okay, so as you can see, my bin post processor is very simple, but it will work very hard. Depends on number of the bins, because per each bin creation, bin factory will invoke this method, and my bin post processor will try to find maybe some fields should be configured by him. Okay, now what should we do in order to register this bin post processor to be a part of the infrastructure? It is very simple. We just need to go to our context, and we just need to declare this as a Spring bin. So class is inject random in bin post processor, and that is all. I even don't need to provide some ID to this class, to this bin, because actually, why do we need the IDs? We use the IDs if you want to make a lookup by ID or to make some kind of injection by ID. But it will never happen, because this is not regular bin. This is not my, this is part of the infrastructure. Okay. And how does Spring realize that it's not a regular bin? Because this, for example, this bin implements my own interface, but this bin implements bin post processor interface. Because of that, Spring will realize that this bin must be created first, and each simple bin, each business bin should be configured with this one, not only by bin factory of Spring. Now let's run the same code, and as we can see, it's 4 times. It must be between 2 and 5, right? Let's run it again. Okay, now it's 3 times. Again, 4 times. Okay, so between 2 and 5. So we see that now annotation inject random int can be used in any class which will be my bins, and it will work. Okay, let's again summarize, and you know what? Again, if you want to ask some questions, you have again several seconds. If no, I will continue. I'm just checking question and answers. No, there is no questions. So let's go on. Now let's talk about what is the policy of the bin factory of Spring against these 2 methods of each bin post processor. What will happen between them? So actually, the steps are the next. First of all, bin factory of Spring creates the bin. In our example, it is Terminator Quarter. We have only one business bin. After it was created and after it was configured by Spring according to the XML configuration, I mean the to be or not to be, I'll be back was already injected to the object, then bin post processor take a first chance to influence on this object. The post process before initialization method will be called. Then after this method finished his work and this bin was returned to the bin factory back, bin factory takes a care to invoke init method of this bin. And then after init method was invoked, process after initialization of bin post processor will be invoked, and my bin post processor will take a second chance again to configure the bin. Okay, so init method always will run for each bin between post process before initialization and before post process after initialization. This is the only difference, the init method. Now, what is init method? How can you declare init method? You have several options. Option number 1, you can inside your XML just provide some kind of this information. Okay, just write init method attribute and write some string, which will be the name of your method you want to be an init method. Another option is to do it not from the configuration file, not from the XML, but inside the code. For that, you have two options. Option number one, you can implement some Spring interface, initializing bin, and implement after properties set method. But it was a very ancient way before we had annotations in Java. And as you can understand, it's not a good idea. If it is the Terminator Quarter, which is my business class, why should it implement some Spring interface? Why do I need such a coupling? Much more nice way is to put add post construct annotation above this method. Okay, so this is other way. So you can do it from the code with add post construct annotation above the method, which must be init method, or you can do it from the side of the configuration inside the XML. But the question which is asked in this moment is why actually do we need init methods if we have the constructor? Because actually, what should be written inside init methods? What is init methods? Init methods usually holds some code which is part of the configuration of the object, right? When we create some object, we want that some code will run in order to configure this object. So we provide this code inside constructor. So why? And if even we have the init method, why not to call this init method from the constructor? Why do we have some kind of declaration of Spring? Okay, so this is, by the way, Jürgen Höller, the main developer of Spring today. And he tries to explain in this slide about two-phase constructor. And when we work with some kind common between all of these technologies, that they take a part in the object creation and object configuration. We have two phases of the object construction. First of all, let's see why it is not a good idea to put some to call some init method from the constructor. Let's try to do it. I'm going to my Terminator Quarter. I will create a constructor for that. Just a moment. Constructor. It must be empty constructor, and I want just to call, not even to call, let's try to print the value of repeat. Okay, I just want even, okay, no, I want the repeat. Okay, I want to print the repeat value. Let's run it. What will be printed? Okay, you see it is 0. It seems like my repeat equals to 3 because I see that when it's used in the say quote invocation, the value of repeat is 3. But when I'm trying to use the repeat inside constructor, I still can see 0. Why it is happening? I believe most of you understand, but in any case, I will explain. It's very simple. Spring don't provide any magic. Only the people which not familiar with how it's working from inside, it looks for them like kind of magic. Wow, Spring created object for me. Spring not only created, he also configured it for me, and it also invoked some methods for me. But actually, Spring uses reflection. Now, in Spring and no any other framework can't configure the state of the object before this object was created. Do you agree? First of all, we need to create that object, and then we can invoke the setter method via reflection or any other way, or directly with reflection to provide the value inside the field. Okay, but in the phase when constructor is working, Spring still didn't configure something inside the object. So anything, nothing is configured yet, and because of that, we will receive null pointer exceptions or 0 if it's integer, and a lot of problems. That means if we work with Spring, the code we were used to write inside constructor today should write init methods. Okay? Now, and this called two-phase construction. Let's try to do it. In order to make it more understandable, let's write here phase 1 of object creation, Java constructor. And instead of that, I want to create some init method. I must be used to do it. Public void if I have some init logic, and we will put this. You know what? Let's put it also in both places. And here we will write phase number 2 init method. Okay, this is phase number 2. Maybe it will be more understandable if you will that way, right? Phase number 1, a regular Java constructor. Phase number 2 of object creation is init method. And how we will declare that it is init method? We can just put here add post construct annotation, but it will not work. Let's check if it work or not. Okay, if it was live event and not a webinar, I just was asking you, why do you think it's not working? But I can hear most of you are screaming because you didn't put something annotation config in the context and you didn't make the component scan. This is not exactly the correct answers. You see, right? You see that phase number 2 is not working. Nevertheless, I put the post construct annotation above the init method, but still we can see it's working. Why? Because if we start our context with from XML, by default, Spring don't register any bin post processors which responsible for different annotations. We have a lot of Spring annotations and the standard Java annotations, not like post construct and predestroy and auto wired and inject and the transactional and so on and so on. Okay, in order to register them, we have several options. Option number 1, know the name of the bin post processor exactly like we did here, right? We declared the bin post processor, I mean the custom bin post processor of us as a Spring bin, and it handled the inject random int annotation. In order that post construct will work, I have, or I will write some bin post processor which will handle it, or I will use some bin post processor which already exists in Spring. The name of this bin post processor, by the way, is common annotation bin post processor. Okay, you see, very long name. And now if I'll run this, you will see it will work. We see phase number 1, and in this phase repeat is still 0. Phase number 2 init method repeat is 5 because it's already configured. I mean, Spring, my bin post processor already injected in the post process before initialization the value of 5 to the repeat variable. Okay, but you will say, just a moment. So we need to remember all the names of all bin post processor which are already exist in the Spring. We actually have a lot of them, right? We have auto-wire, annotation, bin, post processor. You see this class, auto-wired annotation, bin, post processor is responsible of annotation auto-wired. And we have require annotation, bin, post processor, and it is responsible for annotation required, and we have a lot of them. So there is no need to remember all of them. You just can, if you still work in this XML, you just can do, instead of declaring them one by one, to use some XML namespace called annotation config, or there is another namespace, a component scan, which includes annotation config, and then a lot of bin post processor will be included in our context, and they will take a part in the each bin configuration. Okay, let's run it again, and you will see that the same post construct method is working, and now repeat is free, and phase number 2 is working again. Okay, let's try to summarize what we have till now. So again, we have the classes, we have the XML with Spring configuration, bin definition, XML bin definition document reader comes and scans the XML, creates the bin definitions. Bin definitions actually which holds a metadata about our bins. which kind of information? What is the name of the class from which bin should be created? What is the scope of this bin? Which properties does it bin has with which values, and so on and so on. Okay, so we just write a text in the XML, but bin definition document reader creates bin definitions. According to them, bin factory creates a bins, but per each bin, it consults the bin post processor. Please take this bin, take this terminator quotal, do what you need to do, give me back. Now you common annotation bin post processor, take this bin, maybe you have something to do, give me back. Now another one, give me back. After this first circle was finished, bin factory will take care to invoke the init method. No matter we declare this init method in the post-construct annotation or via XML, this method will be invoked, and then we have another circle, another trip around through the bin post processor, and they take a chance to configure it once more. Okay, and then only then the fully configured object will be inside our IOC container. Okay, any questions till now? I'm checking the questions. No questions? So guys, just I want to check that you are alive and you know how to use the question and answers. Just write me, I understand, I don't understand, something to indicate that I'm not alone here. It's very strange feeling to sit alone in the room without any voice. So just let me know that you are alive. Okay. So let's go on. The next, so if you don't have a questions, guys, you didn't got the training rules. Your administrators wants you to ask the questions and to write to me in the Q&A tab and not in the chat. Okay, but I got that you don't have any questions, so I have some questions instead of you. The question is, why do we need two methods in the right? Why it's not enough only one post process before initialization, before init method, and then another circle of bin post processors? Okay, so the answer is related to the proxy. Now we need to talk about something much more complicated. So let's start with some example. I believe you know what is transactions, right? I think it will be a good example. Let's do something like that. I want to put annotation transactional. There is no such annotation. Actually, there is transactional annotation in Spring, but not in the modules I use. Okay. Somebody asked me questions in. I've asked a question in Q&A, but you don't know why. You can see the question was, can you provide some real-world examples of bin post processor usage? It's your custom annotations. It's your custom annotations. If you want, inject random main, by the way, it was one of the real usage. We had some startup which was developed a lot of gambling games, and we had a lot of things related to random. And you know, it's not good idea that any developer which creates a new class which needs some random activity will do it inside the constructor by his own way. Somebody use math.random, somebody use random next in, somebody takes some utility classes. I want to work with some declarative things. So the idea of the annotations that I'm explaining what and not how. By the annotation, I just explain what I want will be done, exactly like you can see here. My explanation is I want that repeat will receive some number between 2 and 5. Okay, and I'm not explaining how it must be done. And I don't need to copy paste the code, the common code. The same with the transactions. Think about it. Okay, now it will be, I think, more real example. Okay, transactional. Okay, I want to invent the thing which already exists in the Spring, but in order to explain you how it is working. So let's create this annotation and let's explain my methodology. I believe you know, right? So if I want to work with transactions, I need to write a lot of code related to open transaction and commit and rollback in the caches, and a lot of code which will be copy pasted because it will be exactly the same code. For example, I have a lot of services which work against the database, and I need a lot of transactional methods, and the logic of transactional is the same. So what I need to do is just to write it once and then copy paste it through all transactional methods. Do you agree it is very ugly? It is against object-oriented design patterns. It's do not copy paste. In my opinion, it's the first rule we got from the God. Okay, do not copy paste. So I want to work against some declarative framework. I want to explain. I need this class to be transactional. The meaning is wrap any method I have in this class with transactions. No matter which method I will invoke, it must be transactional. Okay, this is my convention. Now let's see how it can be done. So we'll create another bin post processor. Try to guess what will be the name. Transactional bin post processor. Something like that. And again, I need to implement bin post processor. And now I have a problem because it is much more complicated than it was in the previous example with inject random int bin post processor. Let's try to understand why it is much more complicated. The previous bin post processor received object from bin factory, and the only thing he does is just to try to configure some field of already created object. What this bin post processor should do, this bin post processor should add the code into the methods of already created bin. So if previous one modified the object, this one should modify the class where from the object was created. And now we have a problem because we are in Java. If you are working in Groovy, for example, in Groovy it's much more simple. You just can take any Groovy object which was already created and add additional methods, change already existing methods, change specific method, change all the methods. But in Java, you cannot do it. Actually, there is a way to do it with agents, but let's even not talk about it. So how can I add the code to the method if I don't have an opportunity to modify the existing classes? The only option is to create the new class which will extend, for example, from the original class. The new class will override each method of the original class and will add the logic related to the transactional to each method. Then to create object from this new generated class which merged the original and transactional logics and replace the bin. So that means bin factory, I'm the transactional bin post processor. I received from bin factory bin, and I saw that his class annotated with transactional. I will not return the same object back to the bin factory. I will replace this object with some proxy object, which will hold inside the original object, but the class of the new object will add transactional code to each method. Okay, this is more or less the idea. Now, it is very important to emphasize that this new generated class, which will be generated on the fly, we have two options. Or it must extend from original class, or it must implement the same interfaces which was implemented by the original class. Otherwise, it will not work. Okay, because nobody will know the name of this class because this class will be generated on the fly. Okay, now now you can ask the questions because I know it's a little bit complicated. The question is, if you got the main idea, why should I need to generate the class on the fly and to replace the original object? Just tell me yes or no. You got the idea? how long this webinar lasts. Okay, 2 hours. What execute first, post construct annotation or post process after initialization? You can never know, but it will happen in the same phase between post process after and post process before. How transaction propagated from one proxy to another? Not in this session. It depends. It's not exactly related to the Spring, and it does has a problems. It depends if it's in the method which called to another method in the same class or not. Okay, but I see most of you got the idea, except from several people. To clarify the transaction example, could you please tell what is the difference between proxy and decorator? It seems that decorator would be better in this case. Actually, it will be mix of proxy and decorator. The proxy design pattern says that I'm replacing the one object with another object, and decorator is just the wrapper above another object. So actually, it will be both of them. I will create a new class and I will replace the original object, but this original object will hold inside, the new object will hold inside the original one, because I will delegate to original method, but I will add some transactional logic. Okay. Clarify example. Different. Okay, no. Okay. Now as you need to add some code to the class, you create a new one, and the new class should either implement the same interface as the original bin, or it should extend the original bin. Exactly. Now I want to explain you what will happen if I have some or even several bin post processor which creates the proxy. Remember what here. Almost any bin post processor which want to find some annotations start with that one, right? Bin clear fields and try to find the annotation. But what will happen if my class was replaced by any other bin post processor? In that moment, bin class will return me terminator quarter. But if this bin post processor will work after this bin post processor, which will replace the original class, the bin class method will return me the name, the reference to the class which was generated on the fly, and I even don't know his name, and no annotations will be present there. So it will be very problematic. So in order not to harm bin post processors, the Spring developers decided to do two methods. And the convention of Spring, if your bin post processor wants to configure the object, I mean the bin himself, it must be done in the first method here, in post process before initialization. Because here you can be for 100% you can be sure that you still work against the original class. And if you want to create some proxy and replace the bin with any other bin, you should write this code here. Okay, this is Spring convention. Okay, so let's try to write our own transactional bin post processor without harming these conventions. So first of all, I want to create some kind of hash map here. Now you will understand why. I want to map the class against the string. The string will be the name of the bin. Let's call it map. Let's create it here, new hash map, something like that. And it's prohibited to me to change the object in this method, but what can I do? Because I know for 100%, because everybody works with the Spring convention, that here my bin still, his class is still original one. Okay, so let's bin class. Now I want to check if bin class annotated by transactional class present, I want to remember his original class to put it in the map. So let's just put it in the map. Map put the bin name and bin class. Okay, that is all. So as you can see, I didn't harmed no bin post-processor. I just remembered some metadata which is important to me, and I will use this metadata in the second phase, in the post-process after initialization. So what I will do here, I want to try to fetch, get by the name of the bin. The idea is that the name of the bin is never changed. The class of the bin can be changed, but the ID of the bin, the name of the bin, the ID of the bin is the same, will never change. So let's try to receive the bin class from my map, and let's check if it's null or not. What does it mean that the name of the class is not null? It means that I remembered the original class. And what was the reason for remembering it? Because it was annotated by transactional. Now I understand that here I will not return the bin, null or not. I will return some kind of proxy. That now I'll show you how can this proxy object be generated. The name and of here the class I will return the bin. You understand the idea? It means okay? So that this criteria is indication for me if it was annotated or not. And if it's not annotated, I just return the original object. There is nothing to do. But if it was annotated, and because of that it was inside my map, I want to return some other object, and now we'll talk about how to create this object. I saw some question. As you need to add some code to the class you created. No, okay, it was before. Now, in order to create the proxy object, you can use two ways. Way number one, you can use cglib jar, or in the latest version of Spring, it's declared as transitive dependency, so it's just inside. Or you can use the technology Spring love more. It's just new proxy instance method of proxy class. Proxy class was created, if I remember, in '99. It's very old class, okay, very old API. And this API knows to do two things. Thing number one, the new proxy method, first of all, will generate a new class according to configuration I will provide inside this method. And then the same new proxy instance will create an object from the new generated class, and I will return this object instead of original bin. So this method takes three parameters: the class loader in order to load the class. So let's take the class from the bin. It's no matter. Okay, it's no matter where from I'm taking the class loader, because it's not the issue. In my opinion, the same class loader which loaded the original class, let him load this one. Okay, so I don't care. The next parameter is much more interesting. It's the list of the interfaces which should be implemented by the new class which will be generated on the fly. Where from I will take the list of the interfaces? From the same bin class. Okay, I'm asking the class. Okay, I'm asking the bin class. I'm going to replace you with the new class. So please give me information. Which interfaces do you implement? I will implement the same. And the last parameter which must be provided here is invocation handler. It's some kind of callback pattern. With help of him, I will just explain to this new proxy instance method what should be the body of each methods inside this new class. So I will create some anonymous class which will hold the inside this invoke method. I will just provide the logic which will be in any methods of the new generated class. Okay, so let's here I will write the code related to transactions. Transaction opened, and then it will be transaction closed. But because I want to delegate to original method, I don't want to replace the original method with transaction logic. I want to wrap the original code with transaction logic. So here I will invoke method. Here I have the reference to it. It's very convenient API, and I should provide the original. This is my original object, the bin. Okay, so it will be a decorator above the bin, and the arguments I also have them here. and this method can return something. I don't know what the original method returns, but I will return the same. This is the idea that I'm returning the same. So as you can see, I didn't harm the original method because I'm invoking it as is on original object with original arguments, and I'm returning the same value like this method was returning, but I add the logic before the method invocation and after the method invocation related to transactions. Okay, this is more or less the idea of proxy and decorator design pattern together, and Spring use it a lot. The transactions of Spring works with bin post-processors. The AOP of Spring works the same way. Just create the proxy. Okay, after we finished it, we go into our context and we will declare it as a regular bin, exactly like we did with the previous bin post-processor, transactional bin post-processor. And now let's run the code and you will see it will fail. Why it will fail? Because Spring says no such bin definition exception. Terminator quarter is defined. It says there is no bin in the context which class called terminator quarter. Let's remember what we did in the main. In the main, remember I told you it's not a good idea to work against the name of the class, because you can never know when this class will be changed because of some annotations, because of some AOP, because of some internal processes of the bin post processor, which decide to replace the implementation of the class with some other implementation in order to add additional code which will wrap the original one. Okay, so if I will make a lookup, you know what? Even let's try to debug and let's see what if I'll make a lookup not according the name of the class, but according the name of the interface. It's another option. You will see this bin exists, but let's ask what the name of the class. The name of the class $proxy7. Okay, so this API, let's again go back here. This API, this one, I mean, this one, generated the new class, provided some stupid random name $proxy7, and the bin which replaced the original bin is from that class. Okay, if you, for example, will put breakpoint here inside the if, and again we will run it, you will see that now the bin class, what is the bin class? It's terminator quarter. But after this code will run, this one, new proxy instance, the class will be replaced, and we actually are returning, you see here, we are returning not the original bin, but we are returning the totally new object from totally new class, and the name of the class can be predicted. That's the reason why it is not a good idea to work with concrete implementation. No matter if you use injection or lookup, it's better to work according to the interfaces, because interfaces never change. Okay. Any questions? Okay, now let's go on. Another component I want to talk about it called application listener. This one knows to listen the events of the context. Actually, we have 4 events: context started event, context stopped event, context refreshed event, and context closed event. The most interesting event is context refreshed event, because context started event, it's just the creation of the context was started. And context, when the context will be built, it will be refreshed. The refresh is the last thing which will happen to the context. So we want to listen in most of the cases to context refreshed event. I want to give you an example when it can be used in the real production world. Several years ago, something like 5, I worked in one project, and we had some service with method warm cache. warm cache. So as you can imagine, what this method did, he just went to the database, fetched some data, changed some data in the database, filled some collection, kind of hash map, and after it is done, the service is ready. So where this code should be called? Can you try to guess? Let's think together. If the warm cache is part of the init configuration of this bin. So if I will call this warm cache method inside constructor, sure, it's not a good idea because we already know that when constructor is working, nothing is configured with Spring, nothing is injected, I don't have data source inside, I don't have nothing, and it will fail. So it seems that I can call the warm cache method from init method, or just put post construct annotation above the warm cache method. And then you will pay attention that the transaction is not working. Because if you remember, the post construct working before proxy was already configured, and because Spring working with declarative transactions, it will not work, and it is not good. Let's try to see the problem, and let's try to solve it with the context listener. I want to take my terminator quarter, and I want to put post construct annotation above say quote. Think about the say quote is warm method. Okay, it must be invoked in the beginning. As you can see in my main, it now say quote will be invoked twice, right? The first time it will be invoked because of the post construct, and the second time it will invoke. You know what? Let's even remove it from here. Let's remove everything from here. Now let's run it. No, again. Actually, we didn't solve the previous problem. Let's try to do it with interface, right? And I want to see the transaction is working, and then we'll talk about the next problem. Now, when we're talking about the interface, we will see that my method is wrapped with transactions, you see? But is called because of the post construct, there is no transaction configured because the bin post processor still didn't create the proxy. And when this method was called after everything was configured, it works with transactions, you see? So now I have a problem. Now I understand that post construct annotation in my case is not good. I want to invent my own custom annotation. Let's call it something like post proxy. Okay, I think it's a good name. And I want that after everything will be configured, including the proxy, somebody will invoke the methods which annotated with post proxy annotation. So who will do it? Context listener, okay? This one. Let's create the class. Let's call it a post proxy invoker application listener. It will implement application listener interface. I can be more specific. If I want to listen to specific event, I can listen to context refreshed event, and that is all. And I'm implementing this method. Now, from the event, I can get to the context. Let's put it aside. Now, from the context, I can take the name cat bin definition names. I can take the names of all bin definitions, and I can iterate through them. And now I want to ask per each bin definition if his original class, pay attention, the original class was annotated with post proxy annotation. Okay, so in the context, I don't have a method, which can give me the bin definition. So I need to inject some other component here. Let's inject some Spring component private configurable listener bin factory. Okay, this one knows about any bin definitions, and I can per each name of the bin ask from the factory, please give me the bin definition according to that name. Let's put it here, bin definition. Okay, this is step number one. You understand? I don't want to talk to the bin. I want to talk to the bin definition, because bin definition holds the original name of the class. And inside the original name of the class, I can see the original annotations, and the original annotations. Okay? Because in the class which called proxy $7, nothing exists. Okay, so now let's take this bin definition and let's see what can I fetch from that here. You see, anything I can change things. I can get depends on, get description, get factory bin name, get the name, get the class name. By the way, get class name. This is a good idea. This is actually what I need. Get bin class name. Let's call it original class name. Now, in that. Maybe this class is still not loaded, so I want to talk to the class, so I need to load this class with class for name. It will return me original class. And after I have the original class, I can try to fetch the annotation original class. Let's get annotation. Even I can do something much smarter. Is annotation present post proxy? And if this annotation present, I want to invoke, let's wrap it with if. I want to invoke this method. No, I'm sorry. This check must be above the method, right? So I need, first of all, to take the original class, because I'm searching for the methods, get methods. Let's put it here. Let's iterate through these methods. And I want to ask per each method, maybe he's annotated with post proxy annotation. And if yes, I want to invoke it, but I want to invoke it on the original, on the current bin. So first of all, I need to take my context. I need to take the bin by the name. Okay. And now the problem is that this method was taken from the signature of bin definition. And the current object maybe is from some other class of proxy. So I need to take the same method by the same name. And in how will I do it? I will say bin dot get class dot get method with the same method like this one. Get name method get parameter types. I believe it's some exception, right? So now we found this is current method. It's not original method. This is current method, but they have the same signature, but they just sits in the different classes. And now I want to invoke this current method just that way on the bin. Okay, now we handle the post proxy annotation. Now we can go to our context and we can declare this listener to be, you see, it's the standard. It's very simple. Anything, just declare it to be here. How did I call it? Something post proxy application listener. And now again, so now my terminator quarter annotated with post proxy, and I can say this is my third phase. Okay, this is phase 3. It's post proxy. Okay, now let's go to the main. Even let's run it. Okay, now we see it's working. So let's see. Again, phase 1 is Java constructor. In that case, the bin is not configured yet. Phase 2 is init method. The bin is configured, but still we don't have the proxy. And finally, phase 3, it's post proxy. And now we can see, by the way, why it was called twice, I think because we call it also from the main. Yeah, I can remove this, right? Now I'm not calling something manually, I just call it with annotations, okay? So I have the constructor, I have init method, and I have post proxy. If we will summarize it, it's look like 3-phase constructor. The first one is Java constructor, the second one is post construct, and the third one after proxy or something like that, which was invoked by the listener after everything was configured. Okay? Any questions? Don't worry, guys. We have something like 45 minutes. It's enough time. So if you have some important questions, you can ask them. Can you explain the idea of var method once more? No. It will happen only once. Okay, it was by mistake. I don't need to call the method say quote or warm cache here. Okay, I just deleted it, so it will be. Think about it. It's just warm cache method. Okay, not I'll be back, but warm cache it only once. Because context can be refreshed only in the end when he was built. Okay, so then it was refreshed, and then my listener will invoke each method with which was annotated with post proxy annotation. Okay, let's continue. Here, somebody asked to talk about the bin factory post processor. This is very interesting player. His duty to allow to configure bin definitions or bin factory before bin's creation starts. Let's try to provide you some example. It's almost the real example for production world, but not exactly. Let's think together that my terminator, I believe you're familiar with the notation deprecated, right? You know the notation deprecated. What is the retention policy of this annotation? I thought it was something like source, but it seems that it's annotation for runtime. It means that the one who invented this annotation thought that maybe somebody in the runtime will want to check if the class is deprecated or not. But when you put the deprecated annotation above your class, think good about it. You put the deprecated when you have the alternative, right? So my question was why this annotation comes without any parameter which can point on the new implementation. Okay, usually you will see it in the comments. So I want to invent much better annotation, deprecated class, and this annotation I want it will have the new impl property, which will point to some new implementation. What will be the new implementation of Terminator? I believe you know it, T1000, right? Okay, this is new impl. Let's create this one, and later we'll create the annotation. Oh, what have I done? Yes, actually it's a class which extends. In order to make it more simple, we extend the terminator, and we will override the method say quote with something like actually I don't remember the quotes of the liquid terminator, so he will say I am liquid. It must be something like liquid, right? Something like that. I'm liquid. Now, let's create this annotation. This annotation will hold a class variable with name new impl. And now everything is okay. Now, what I want to do, I want to create some process which will automatically replace all classes, all bins with deprecated classes with newer implementations. So when this process should work, I want to introduce some kind of internal Spring component, not to the phase when the bins was already created. I want to intrude to the process before object was created, but after the bin definition was created. Okay, and this one called bin factory post processor. Okay, so again, bin factory post processor let me possibility to configure, to change something in the bin definitions. Remember that the bin class name, it's one of the bin definitions. And if I want to play with that, I want to change the scopes, I want to change the name of the classes and some other activities, to change the regular expressions with the real property values. This is the duty of the bin factory post processor. So let's create someone. Let's call it deprecation handler bin factory post processor. Implements bin factory post-processor. It has only one method, post-process bin factory. Okay, so the only one method, and this method has a reference to bin factory. We already saw this configurable listable bin factory. And this method will be invoked when there are only bin definitions even before bin post-processors exists, okay? No bins are exist, only bin definitions are exist. So let's do it. First of all, I can change some configuration of bin factory himself, but in my case, I want to take get bin definition names, the same like we did with the listener. I want to iterate through the names. I want to ask from this bin factory per each name to receive the bin definition. Okay, and I'll do the same with class for name. I will load the class, because in that phase, even class not loaded because it's just a text. Bin definition is just the part of the XML, is just a text. Dot get bin class name. Okay. And this is bin class, right? Again, ugly triangle catch. There is no some utility for that. Now I want to, let's take the bin class and let's try to read the annotation, get annotation, deprecated class. And let's check if it exists or not. If annotation not exists, that means that this class is deprecated. And if this class is deprecated, I want to change the definition of that bin and to provide the name of the new implementation. So what will I do? I will do something like bin definition, set bin class name to the other bin class name. And where from I will take this name? From the annotation, new impl, get name. Okay? So what actually will happen, it's like somebody will go here and will do that one. Okay, exactly this will happen. Somebody will change the bin definition before bin factory started to create the objects. Okay, this is the idea. Okay, it's very recommended to do in production, and you will be fired in the next day. But actually, I did it once in my life, and it was very important. I'll explain you when it can be good. So let's introduce this bin factory to be part of our context. You see, every time it's the same. You want to customize the Spring infrastructure. You create different bin post-processor, bin factory post-processor listeners, and just declare them as a bins. And Spring understands that it's not simple bins, it's not business, it's part of the infrastructure because they implement some interfaces of Spring. Let's see what will be the result. Okay, nothing happened. We need to put some post construct because now we don't have the annotations we had in the original Terminator Quarter class. So let's put here post construct, something like that, not post proxy. I want post construct, for example. Even. Okay, I am liquid was printed here. You see? Okay. Did you got the idea of bin factory post processors? No magic, right? No, but people will if you do tomorrow the same thing like I shown to you today, the developers will be very crazy because they will not understand, because the T1000 class is even not declared like a Spring bin. It's just a class. We don't have some component annotation, and we don't declare it in the XML. And suddenly we can see that the class was replaced. The real example from the real life, when I used that, we had some kind of very big migration, and we want to predict how it will happen. So it wasn't done in the production, but we just wrote some kind of bin factory post processor, which replaced all the deprecated classes, the bins from them, with the new one implementations, and we just want to predict how the system will behave in order to decide if we will start with the migration or not. Okay, so but think about some other good things which can be done with bin factory post-processor. Yeah, it's a good example for production, sure. The example of real existing bin factory post-processors, for example, you want to provide some value to the message from the property file. So you will put something like, and here message, and you have the property file with the message against the real value. So you want, before the bin of the terminator will be created, somebody will come here and will replace this regular expression with the real value from database or from property file. Okay, so we want to change bin definitions before the objects will be created, or maybe you want to change the scopes of the bins, or maybe you want to change some other metadata of bin definition. For that, you have bin factory post-processors. Okay, let's summarize everything. So we have the XML, we have the bin definitions, then we have bin factory post-processor, which will change something in there, and then we have the bin post-processors, the regular one, and the bins will be created according to them, and a fully configured object will be inside the context. The next thing is now we continue going with history. After Spring version 2.5, it was a possibility to create, to declare, I'm sorry, not to create, to declare bins with annotations and not with XML declaration. In order to do that, you just need to put add component annotation here. Okay, so I just can put annotation this one. And I need to care that some Spring process will scan the package where this component annotation presents above the class, and then Spring will understand that bin definition should be created from the annotations. And in order to start the scan process, which will search for the add component annotation, you have two options. If you're still working with XML, you need to put this namespace component scan, and base package attribute will take the root or specific package which you want to scan in order to find these component annotations or any other annotations which hold the component inside. Or you and not work with XML, you can use another kind of context, annotation config application context, which takes as a parameter package which should be scanned, or list of packages which should be scanned, and then this one, the mol, will scan these specific packages. His real name is class path definition bin definition scanner. He's not bin post-processor and he's not bin factory post-processor. He's resource loader aware. And actually his duty to create bin definitions according the classes which are annotated with add component. So he scans the specific package, and if he finds the class, he has a lot of conventions, which information, which metadata should be included to the bin definition. For example, the ID of the bin will be the name of the class, but decapitalized. The scope by default will be singleton. If you want to change the scope, you can put, for example, add component here, and I want to change the scope, so I can do it with that way, and I can provide here some other scope and a lot of other things. Okay, so with annotation you can do almost everything you can do with XML, and the bin definition still will be built, but by this mol. Okay. From Spring 3, it was an option to build the context with Java configuration file. In order to do that, you need to use the same annotation config application context. But from Spring 3, it receives not only the packages which should be scanned, but also you can provide here some Java class, which will be annotated with configuration annotation. And it will be parsed and bin definitions will be added. And it seems that it must be some kind of bin definition reader, right? Exactly like it was with XML. What is the common thing between XML and Java config? Both of them are centralized configuration for the Spring. One is XML, another one is Java file. But Java file will not be parsed with some bin definition reader, no matter that even the class which is responsible for this Java configs called annotated bin definition reader, he doesn't implement even one interface. It just with CG kind of proxy about the Java config file, and it works without reflections later. It just delegates to your methods which provided in Java config. This annotated bin definition reader is part of the application context, and his duty is to register all Java config files. So this is how Java config will look like. You put add configuration annotation above this class in order to sign that this is not just the Java class, is more than that, it's configuration for Spring. It will be more or less similar, maybe a little bit to the XML, but with Java syntax. You have a lot of additional annotations like component scan or import resource or import for importing other configurations instead of the namespaces which you have in the XML. And if you want to declare the bins, you just need to write some method and put add bin annotation above this method. And then Spring will understand if there is a bin annotation that this is not method, this is declaration of the bin. For example, you can see here two bin declarations. The cool DAO is just the interface of this bin. The name of the bin will be DAO. In order to create the bin, Spring will delegate to your custom logic inside this method. It's kind of mix that you can customize the factory how to create the bins. And you also can use other annotations in order to configure the scopes, and everything you can do with XML, you can do with Java file, but it's Java code, so you have the auto completion and it's type safe and it's much more advantages. Who handles the Java config? The name of this class is configuration class postprocessor. This is special bin factory postprocessor. His duty not to change the existing bin definitions. His duty to add additional bin definitions according to the methods annotated with add bin. Okay. The one who registers this bin definition, this annotation config application context by himself, he will register this bin factory postprocessor, and it will create bin definitions according add bin annotations, and it also handles additional annotations which are the same like you have the namespaces in the XML. Component scan, for example. Okay, so again, them all will be. The next thing which was created from when you have additional plugins, which plugins? The next configuration, which was available from Spring 4, called GUI config. It's was developed in December of previous year. This is how it will look like. You have, it's like simple, it's like XML because it's also a text. Okay, so it has all the advantages of the XML because it's a text. It can be changed without recompilation, but it also has the advantages of Java config because in the contrast of XML, you can write the code here. Okay, so here we can see the declaration of bin. The name of the bin will be my DAO. The implementation is DAO impl, and above you will see import to the real class. This is another bin, jconf service the name, jconf service impl the name of the class, and I want to configure that it will be prototype, and I want to configure some property of this bin to the previous bin. Okay, so it's like a ref, if you know, in XML. But it's much more powerful. In order to create the context from the Groovy config, you need to use generic Groovy application context that way. Okay, and it will be parsed by Groovy bin definition reader, exactly like XML bin definition reader, but it parses the Groovy files. Now, if we understood that we have 4 different types of context, XML, annotation, Java config, and Groovy config, let's try to write our own context, how it sounds. Actually, it's a very funny story. Someday I just looked something in the Spring internals with a big knife, and I found class called property. No, just a moment. Property bin definition. It was property definition reader, something like that. Maybe it was opened. Property. Here it is. Look at the date. It was developed in the same day when XML bin definition reader was developed. I think it must be a very funny story. The Youngin Holler Harp, which developed all the Spring, I believe they didn't knew what will be more convenient to the people to configure the context of the Spring with XML or to configure the context with property file. By the way, how this property file must look like, I'll show you the example. Context properties. Okay, you see something like that. So this is the class. This is I'm configuring the parameter repeat and I'm configuring the parameter message. And they created the parser which knows to build the bin definitions from the property files according to this format, exactly like XML bin definition document reader created the bin definitions from the XML. But I didn't find any usage of this definition reader because I think they just remembered how the configuration of log4j looked with property file. If you know what I'm talking about, you can configure log4j with XML and you can configure it with property file. So the configuration of the property file is just a hell. So maybe because of that, they decided that XML is a better format. And this property file document reader is not used at all. So let's try to use it and let's try to create our own kind of context. Let's provide the opportunity to create the Spring configuration. Yes, I know the advantages, but just for fun and just to understand how the thing is working, let's create class which will be called, how we will call it, property file context. Okay, application context. It's like XML application context, but now it will be property file. So in order to do it, I need to extend from generic application context, not generic Groovy, generic application context. And I will create constructor which will take as a parameter file name of my property file. Yeah, this will be the next task, Martin. JSON file configuration, right? I thought about it. So let's open startup together. File name will be here. But if you want to do it, before you will create the JSON file application context, before that you need to create JSON document bin definition reader, something like that. Okay, it is much more complicated. Now I'm just using component which is not used by no technology. So I'm creating this one, property bins definition reader. Okay. He takes as a parameter the place where he need to register the bins. Okay, so it will be this. Okay. So again, the constructor of the definition reader takes the destination where to register the bins he will find. And now I want to ask him to register the bins. So definition reader, please load bin definitions. And here I will provide the resource. My resource is the file name. Okay. By the way, this method will return the number of found bins. Okay. And I want even to print this number. After I did it, I need to I need to refresh. Remember, we talked about the last thing the context will do. It's a refresh. And now let's try in our main to create the context not from the XML. Okay, not from the XML, but from our new kind of context. And then I will apply to the context and I will make a lookup quote to quarter.class and I will call to say quote method and let's see what will happen. Now I believe it will fail because we don't provide the repeat annotation, but not good. No, not context XML, context properties. Now it's context properties. Let's see what do we have here. We have repeat 0. This is a problem, repeat 0, but you see number of found bins 1. So he succeeded to find the bin according to this configuration of quarter. But the problem is no matter that I provided that repeat is 100 and I anticipated to maybe 100 times. The problem is that we don't have a setter for repeat value because before we just cared about this value by inject random int annotation. So this context is still don't know nothing about the annotations. I believe in the next session we will teach him. And just for now, I will create the setter for my repeat. And now I believe it will work and we will see it 100 times hasta la vista baby. Okay, this is so this is something esoteric, as you can see. Okay, after we did even that one, let's a little bit try to talk about what is the price, because we understand Spring is very good framework. It's very convenient. It provides to us opportunity to use a lot of design patterns, to decouple things, to use annotations, to minimize our context configuration. But what is the price? First of all, let's talk about what we will benchmark. What is interesting? It's interesting to me to compare, to benchmark the how long it will take to create object with new, with reflection, and with Spring. Then I want to benchmark lookup and injection. What is better in the performance point of view? The next thing, it's interesting for me how long to generate a proxy when we create in the new classes by the proxy, and believe me, Spring use this a lot. Okay, it's not very popular to write your own bin post-processor every day. Maybe the one who customized the Spring and build the infrastructure for the company, he writes 5 or 7 bin post-processors, but it's not something common which will be done every day, not like Spring Beans. But in any way, you have a lot of bin post-processor which already exists in the Spring. One of them handles the transaction, another one AOP, and another one the caching, and the Hibernate, and so on and so on. So, and most of them generate proxy, because this is the way for Spring to introduce a new code related to something which related to the annotations you use. Okay, you want AOP, it will be a lot of proxies. Okay, so it's interesting to me how long it will take to generate a new class in Java. It's very interesting, I think it is the most interesting, what is the performance will pay when the method invoked via proxy, okay? And the aspects, what is the cost of the aspects. And I want also to compare CGLib against dynamic proxy. This is two technologies which can create classes on the fly for me. And another thing, first of all, how do we benchmark? Okay, what is benchmark? If you don't know, the benchmark is to system nano time before method run and system nano time after the method run, and then print the difference. This is more or less the idea of the benchmark. But it's a little bit more complicated. So it's several phases. So for example, students, I tried to ask the students of Java, do you know what is benchmark? And they told me, benchmark, sure, we know, benchmark, it's a whiskey. So it's phase number one. It's a little bit more complicated. Junior software engineers think that in order to make some benchmark, they need to do something like that. For example, I want to measure the time of lookup. Okay, so before context get bin, I put the before system current time millis, and then system current time millis, and to print the difference. Okay, but this is not good because you need to the average time. So we want to invoke it a million to create million invocations. But this will be removed by Java optimizations, so you will receive 0 nanotime. Senior software engineer know in order to avoid the dead code elimination optimization, he need to use the variable which used here inside the block of benchmark. Okay, so I'm just printing the DAO in order that optimization called dead code elimination will not remove this block. Okay, this is called dead code. But everything is bullshit, because if you want to benchmark something, exactly, it's a lot of problems. Nano time not working correctly, current time millis, it depends on the operation system, and you have the class loaders and the garbage collectors inside. And if you want to measure the pure time, you need to know that this is how you will do your benchmark. There is framework which was written by Oracle engineer Off. It's not advertisement, it's a fact, because it is Oracle, it is for free. The name of his benchmark called harness. Okay, so just write in the Google Alexei Shepilov harness and you will find his tool. And if you want to compare between performance of things, you just need to run his tool and you sit and drink the benchmark and it will provide the statistics for you. So I used his tool, his code, in order to do the benchmark, and this is the result we will see, and we will it is the last part of my presentation. So look here, map.get, so it just simple hash map. I just want to know how long the resolution from the map is working. In my machine it's 5.7 nanoseconds. But when you make in the context get bin, no matter that the context is kind of a map, it will take 72 nanoseconds. And if you make it the lookup by the name, not by the name of the bin, not by the ID, but by the class or by the interface, it will take even more, 91 nanoseconds. The next thing I checked how long it will to create the object. The regular new of Java creates the object with 3.3 nanoseconds. I mean the constructor is empty, okay? Just the creation of the object, the pure construction. If you create the object via reflection, I know that most of you heard the myth that reflection harms the performance. Seriously, yes, harms, but just a little bit, okay? Almost no differences. If you will compare to the real problems like I/O and the network, it's multiple thousand longer. But when you create the object via XML, so I mean how long it takes to Spring to create object, if this bin configured in XML, it will take 700 nanoseconds. Okay. But you see, it's not in the proportion. I have much more. It's very interesting who will lose this competition. Now, if you activate all standard build post processors in your XML, I mean, if your XML includes this line, okay, this one, because you wrote this, each object will be created much longer because a lot of bin post processors will take a chance to configure something inside, right? So the difference is multiple 3. If you put add component annotation above the class, and if you want to see how long will it take to create this object from this class, the same time, okay? Now, Java config, I thought it will be the best performance because it's without any reflection. It's just delegation to Java code, but it was, you see, 5,000 nanoseconds. And this is really not good. And the Groovy config exactly like XML. Okay. If you ask me why Java config takes so long to create the objects, because it's a lot of proxy around the Java config, and the stack trace of the methods is very long. Now, the next thing is injection. How much time will take to Spring to inject the values or the bins to the bins if we will configure the injection via XML. I mean, this, for example, this is injection, okay? I inject I'll be back value to the property message. Or another example of injection with annotation will be like you saw, for example, in my listener. Where is my listener? Here. This is another example of injection. So I wanted to compare what will take more time. So XML injection 700 nanoseconds, XML with the same time, annotations win, auto-wired working very fast, Java config 3000 nanoseconds, and the Groovy is the same like XML. Now, after this, I was a little bit in panic because I very love Spring, but I thought, wow, it's so heavy for performance. But then I thought, just a moment. All these things influence only on the bootstrap, because the injection and the creation of most of them, 99% of them, is in the Bootstrap. So, and I tried to create 1 million of prototypes and measure the time, and it was only 4.5 seconds. Okay, so you can breathe. And the time for lookup for million singletons is only 1.0 second. So my Bootstrap will be longer by several seconds. It's not a story. It's not a case. Okay, so you can breathe. But the next things I wanted to check, it's about the related to the proxy. If you create a regular object without any proxy, without creating the class for that object, I remember we already talked about it, it's 3.3 nanosecond. But if you create the object with new proxy instance, because this is very long process, because before the object should be created, the whole class should be generated, it will take 4,000 nanoseconds. And if you use it is CGLib, dynamic proxy wins here. It's only almost multiple 2 faster. But this is again not so important because most of the classes will be generated in the Bootstrap. Now, this is the most important slide if you want to know about the performance of Spring, because this is not the Bootstrap, this is the real production world. What happens when I'm invoking methods? Okay, if I'm invoking the regular method, which sits in the class which not wrapped with decorator and this proxy, just invoking the method, will take 3.3 nanoseconds. But if your class was wrapped with some other class which was generated by CGLib and you invoking his method, now it's almost the same. It's not the story. 10 nanoseconds, 3.3 nanoseconds, it's not the case, because again, if you will try to write 2 bytes to the disk, it will take 4,000 milliseconds and not nanoseconds. Okay, so it's not a story. The same with dynamic proxy, the same 10 seconds. But if you use Spring aspects, it will take more than 200 nanoseconds for invocation of the method, and it is very dangerous because if you invoke a lot of methods which are wrapped with Spring aspects, it will influence very seriously on your performance. For example, if you will invoke 8 times the method which was wrapped with Spring aspects, it's exactly the same like to write 2 bytes in the disk or to serialize 2 bytes. Okay, so you can even compare between these two things. So as a conclusion, I can say if you need some kind of specific aspects, you can use Spring AOP. But if you want some kind of aspects which will wrap, which will make a tracing for your application for any classes, so you want to handle exceptions with aspects, and you cannot specify the specific package, you want to wrap everything with proxy in order to receive the aspects, do not use proxy. Or use aspect.js, or write bin post processor by yourself, which will do the needed proxy for you, because it will be 10 nanoseconds instead of 250. Okay, so this is the conclusion. If you want to work good with Spring, if you want to enjoy your life, use Spring. But if you want good performance, you need to be familiar with Spring internals and not just try things without analyzing how do they work. Okay, guys, so now we have something like, 5 minutes for the questions, but if your organizers will not disconnect me, I can sit with you no matter. Okay, I have a time. So the questions, please. Oh, wow. Okay, so I have 65 questions. Let's start from the end. What is the name of the tool? The name of the tool, let me show you. This is a good question. It's called harness, something like that. Alexei Shepelov. Here you can even No. Let's write Alexei Shepilov benchmark. Okay, benchmark. Here,